So, I've often been the critic of modernity and just the way things are going. But I think now it's becoming undeniable because the things that previously made you sound like a bit of an idiot for saying, and a bit of a racist and a pessimist, it's right in front of your face now. You really can't ignore it. And today, which is the 10th of March, 26, there's been a couple of videos going around that really sum it up. Two of them, actually, to show the really what's going wrong with two unique little things. So, the first one is, diversity. I've never been a fan. I grew up in Leicester. For those that don't know, Leicester is, I think, the most diverse city just after London. It's the first one, I think, that reached majority minority, if that makes sense. So majority non-English in the UK. And even though I grew up there, it's gotten so much worse. And one thing that you can't help but think about is, when you see, the counter-argument, which is normally, oh, what about the English in the south of Spain? Well, I get that. I think that, when these people are setting up, I guess you could call them colonies. But, we're talking like Benidorm and places like that, Malaga, where there's loads of English stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, the culture is taking a nosedive. I'm not making up for that. But what I am thinking is that at least those people are bringing money in. They are net contributors to the economy. They don't sit around on the dole. They're normally pensioners that are just being sent money from the UK. And again, that's not good for us. But for these enclaves of English people, that's good for, the Spanish. But then they're not committing any violent crimes either. And they don't hate the Spanish. They really like the Spanish, But generally speaking, people go to Spain on holiday or maybe to go and retire because they like Spain. They like the Spanish. They like the weather. They like everything. And so when you go to Leicester or Bradford or Birmingham or London or any of these other cities in Europe, I've experienced it in Europe as well, the people that have moved there don't even like the locals. They, the Muslims are the worst for it. Obviously they see as infidels and whatnot and kafir and generally speaking just non-believers. And so what I don't understand is this whole turkey for Thanksgiving mindset of locals saying, oh, well, these Muslims are part of us now, they're part of the country, and Keir Starmer recently having said to the Muslims that they're now the face of England. It's unbelievable. I genuinely, it boggles the mind. But, normally you get that, oh, well, that's not really true, that's not how it works. And now, though, as of literally today, there is a perfect video. I have never seen such a perfect timing for this mindset and this situation. I'll show you it now. But essentially what's happening is we have a leftist activist talking about New York City and about how, people from all over the world are welcome and that these are all New Yorkers and blah, 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 blah.
You're coming to New York to tell people who belongs in New York and who doesn't belong in New York. We were born and raised in New York, and we want everyone here to stay in New York. You don't get to come from outside.
Just to have, I'm not joking, a literal bomb thrown over his head by a terrorist. A nail bomb. It was a nail bomb thrown over his head. I'm just watching this back as well, for the first time, wearing headphones. And you can literally hear this guy that throws the bomb run up and shout, Allahu Akbar.
And then tell everyone else. And then tell everyone else.
So, his intentions are very obvious. There's no denying, who he is as a person. So, I mean, how is it even deniable at that point? That's how... Do you know what I mean? That's the perfect... it's like... 100 years ago, you used to get those newspapers, and in the newspaper, it was characters, and they were all labelled, and it was trying to portray a situation. We've got that right now in the form of a 15-second video. It's brilliant. Obviously, it's not brilliant, the situation, but luckily the nail bomb didn't go off either, which is why the video's being circulated so much. I think if it actually turned some of the spectators into pink mist, I think that video would not be going around as much. But yeah, really interesting listening to Podcast of the Lotus Eaters. Not the best name, I think, in terms of ones that roll off the tongue, but there we go. Because they make some very good points about that sort of thing. It's one that I can't help but think about the fact that when, you know, some leftist has a bomb thrown over their head into a crowd whilst talking about that type of person, they somehow manage to double down. They somehow manage to take that incident and say, well, this is the fault of the right wing. It's their fault. And that, what's her name? Something or another from the Green Party that says she's a plumber. When she was asked about why the Manchester bombings happened, she managed to put the blame on right-wingers creating division.
What we did after the terror attacks was we came together and we stuck up for each other.
But you've never asked why are those things happening?
Of course we have.
Why are they happening?
Of course we have, because people like you are dividing
so I'm responsible for the Manchester Evening News Arena bombing now?
That's not what I've just said.
What are you even talking about? What I don't understand as well is when you hear a Muslim talk about how the Quran instructs them to terrorize the non-believers, how can you just ignore that when there's been 60,000 terrorist attacks across the world from Islamists since 9/11? It's unbelievable. It's not at a point where it's debatable. It's just, I mean, like, if someone was calling, like, Hindus or Sikhs or Buddhists or Christians or, like, I don't know, find someone that believes in, like, ancient Greek gods, calling them a terrorist and stuff like that, you'd say what you want about, you know what I mean? But for some reason, the Muslims get a one-off, like a get-out-of-jail-free card, so. Anyway, the second video that I found really interesting, it's two women, and it's the whole, like, I don't know how to describe it, you know, sort of that porno style, you know, oh, the pizza man comes round and you know, flash him your tits, whatever. But they're doing it in real life. And I say this all the time to my wife, because obviously, like, I don't really, I'm not involved with females in my life, and that's a conscious decision. But my wife, I always say to her, if I were a woman, I would not do half the things that these women do, because it's the equivalent of, sort of, as a man, people knowing that you've got thousands and thousands of pounds stuffed in your pockets. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel about it. If I knew that I, under my clothes, had something that these absolutely vulgar men wanted, and I know that a lot of them will just take it, I wouldn't go to these places where I'd be really vulnerable. It wouldn't be my fault if it did happen to me. I'm not trying to put the blame on a victim, but I wouldn't do these things because you're so vulnerable. So, yeah, what is it? Domino's Delivery comes out, and they're like, "Oh, do you want a tip?" And then, you know, takes the dressing gown off. But if it was the other way around, you know, if I stood there and I said to some Domino's Delivery, I don't know what they are, drivers or whatever, "Do you want a tip?" and then flash my tallywhacker out, I'd just get arrested. But I don't know, the guy that they did it to obviously is not English, and so he quite liked it. But it's one of those, isn't it? Why would you do that? It just goes to show how completely degenerate the world's gone. And I can't even imagine that these most radical, you know, like suffragettes had this in mind. I can't imagine this is where things were going 100 years ago, or 50 years ago. But it's where it's at now. And you have to sort of look at this trajectory. So 100 years ago, women were very respectable, wore long skirts, blah, 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 couldn't vote. And then they got the vote. Everything really started going wrong. And now they're flashing delivery drivers and there's billboards with OnlyFans QR codes on it. Where are we going to be like 30, 50, 100 years from now? I genuinely, it boggles the mind. I recently saw how many sexual partners somebody has in their lifetime, and it's like, what is it, 14 for men? I think it was actually less for women, but it's unbelievable. I don't even know 14 women. How is this happening? But I don't know. It's not getting to get any better, is it? But my biggest concern, I guess, is the fact that normally something like this happens, and this is on a society level, but also on a personal level. Normally, the reason that it stops is because something bad happens. And I kind of just fear that that thing that is bad will be equal to how bad things are getting. So the more degenerate you get, the more that you accept foreign cultures into your country, the worse the consequences are going to be. And I think the consequences are going to come thick and fast. To highlight why this is particularly worrying, though, when looked into, 1 in 3 women said that they've had inappropriate actions taken towards them or some form of stalking from a delivery driver. So these OnlyFans models are just going to make it perpetually worse, because foreigners will see this, and let's be honest, it's always that type. It's, well, okay, not always, but disproportionately, it is from foreign cultures that don't see women and their consent as, you know, something to even really consider.
You're a delivery man.
I'm doing it in part-time. I'm not a delivery man, please. Can we be in touch?
You want to keep in touch?
I want to. You just sleep. If you don't mind.
No.
We'll become friends.
No, I can't.
But anyway, yeah, I'm done bimbling for today. I did have, just on a side note, I had a bit of welding quoted for my van, right? £1,380. What the how? What, the whole van was only 1,350. Are they just going to replace it with another one? It genuinely boggles the mind. So I'm just going to wind up doing that myself. But anyway, yeah, yeah, that's it. Bye.